So what's funny is I actually texted somebody yesterday at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I said I just found out that today's not Friday, but today is Friday. It's
That's great.
actually Friday. We had a great show yesterday, Josh, and appreciate everybody who tuned in, and hopefully we've got some follow over from that. Yesterday we had Matt Bellis on from Reopen PA. And I think that it was really great to get an update on what just some of the recent law changes and things like that have been in Pennsylvania. Our show format here with the Build and Grow with Real Estate show, the Build and Grow with Real Estate show on the Real Estate Hackers Network, is we start Monday through Wednesday with a little bit of news, 5 to 10 minutes worth of news, and then 20 to 30 minutes worth of content. Content that is timely relevant, geographically relevant to the specific topic of real estate investors and realtors. That's who our show is geared towards. On Thursday, we have a guest on who has either some timely information about what's going on. And then on Friday, we kind of do a news wrap up. Listen, there's not enough real estate news to do a half an hour show every day on the real estate news that's out there. So what we do is we talk economic and real estate news, economic news as it applies to real estate on Friday. So that's what today's show is. We have more content than we are going to be able to get to. So we are going to have to move quickly through it. But just a real quick introduction on who we are. My name is Judah Hoover. I am with Slate House Group. We are a full service real estate company. Josh apparently isn't going to put up the banner on.
I know. You know what? I'm distracted because
you're just zoning me out. That's fine. I have, lots of girlfriends and ex-girlfriends who have done the same thing, Josh. I appreciate it. So my kids do it on a regular basis too. No worries. So we are a modern real estate company. If you want your property managed, if you want to list a property, if you want to buy a property, all you got to do is give me a call. That is my cell phone number right there. Don't call me after midnight. Don't call me during church on Sunday mornings. But other than that, that is my personal cell phone number. Give me a shout, and we'd love to talk to you about real estate. Who the heck are you, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Josh Weidman. I've been a real estate investor since 2006. My company, Hard Money Bankers of Central PA, we loan to real estate investors. So if you're looking to fund your next real estate project, give me a call or shoot me an email. My email is josh@hardmoneybankers.com. We are a direct lender. We don't broker our loans. So, because we're a direct lender, that means we can give you fast underwriting approval and we can fund your deals. Once we have all the information, title's clear, we can close within 24 hours. I do want to say right now, we're having a little bit of an issue with our comments here. Not sure what's going on, but hey, I can see your comments. I just can't respond. So we'll respond verbally. But anyway, go ahead. We got tons
of content today. And there's a lot of news coming out. Here's what I feel about the news right now. So I have a teenage son and a son that's about to be a teenager, and I remember my middle school, Mr. Grosh, middle school gym teacher who then also taught health, and he said, "Listen, two things that I will always remember him for is he wrote the word, there's always going to be mean, nasty people in the world. We call them jerks," and he wrote the word jerks on the blackboard for some reason. And he said, "You're always going to have jerks in your life. They're always going to be there." Great life lesson. Always just recognize that there's going to be jerks. The other thing that he said is the time of life that you guys are coming into right now, you're going to feel on top of the world next minute. You're going to feel in the dumps. And maybe it's a period or two later. Maybe it is a day or two later, but you are going to feel great. And then you're going to feel awful. And then after you're done feeling the worst you've ever felt, you're going to feel really good. And guess what? I was thinking about this week as we were reading stock market news and real estate news and housing news and unemployment data and everything else like that. It's kind of funny how this really is a roller coaster that we're on right now. Now, I think it's an improving roller coaster. I think it's a roller coaster that, it's like using a yo-yo going upstairs. So right. there's ups and downs as you go up, but you're going up. And I just think, yesterday was one of those days where we saw a huge sell-off in the stock market because there's so much money in there
Well,
right now.
You think that's the reason? I've been debating this like as I was getting ready for the show. The one thing that I kind of struck me, I have a Facebook friend who is a day trader and is pretty successful with it. And he has been bad mouthing this Robinhood app like nobody's business, and mainly because of what is happening right this moment in the stock market. I'm wondering if there was a lot of talk earlier this week of you got all these amateurs, they're inflating the prices in the stock market and they're jumping in.
They're also going to negatively pull it down because they can sell this quick. Boom, 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 boom. And then they sell. And so what my sister Jana, who is a regular guest in our comments, she is a Edward Jones either financial planner or financial advisor. I know that she's definitely one and definitely not the other, and I know that it's important. I just forget why. She says that one of the biggest things that a financial advisor does is tell people, no, don't sell. Remember, we're in this for 5 or 7 years. Remember that if we sell right now, it's going to mean whatever else. And she called me, I don't know if I should tell you this, she called me crying one time because somebody like sold $250,000 worth of stock. And she's like, now I made a fraction off of everything that they sold. It was my biggest personal day because, whenever you sell, I don't care where you're selling, you're always going to pay a commission. She's like,
right.
I made money off of each of those things, but I just know long-term it's going to hurt this person. So she made thousands of dollars in one day and was upset about it because of the bad end result, the bad long-term result that was going to happen. So I think that that's definitely one of the negative side effects of apps like Robinhood.
Well, yeah, I think you're probably right. And it's interesting that you brought up your sister in this because I talked to a potential borrower, right, on a project. This is months ago. This is right at the beginning of the coronavirus shutdown and things. And she made a really similar comment, but she was comparing it to 2008. And she said, my clients, they've been with me for a long time. And in 2008, my phone was ringing off the hook with people saying, sell everything, get my money out of the market. But now, 12 years later, they had gone through that mess. They saw how it turned out, and they weren't so they weren't so trigger happy when it came to sell. That's why I think you saw that a lot of the institutional players had so much more of an impact on where the market was going. But now we go back to that 2008, trigger happy environment. And I'm wondering if just because it hit the newspapers earlier this week that prices were inflated, did that cause people to then sell off, or did they see indicators that said,
I think the spark, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the spark is, but the spark was overreacted to. I think that the spark was a rise in COVID cases. And I think that the main precipitating factor for the rise in COVID cases is the increased testing that we're seeing. We're seeing deaths and hospitalizations still, low or lower than what they have been. Yep. So yeah, I mean, also, we're seeing an increase because testing is now happening in secondary and tertiary markets like Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where there just wasn't widespread testing before. So there used to be widespread testing in the top 25 to 50 markets in the U.S. And now that the top 250 markets in the U.S. have availability to wide-scale testing, and they're also not just, there used to be restrictions on are you sick? Do you feel bad? Is there a reason we should test you? Now there's more and more people getting tested. So the problem is, are they sick now? Did they just get the virus? Have they had the virus for 6 months? It's back to that age-old thing. So I think that there was a little bit of inflation in the market. There was a spark to cause some downturn. There was also been a good run-up recently, so there's profit taking. Buying something for $5 and then it being worth $10, you don't actually get that $10 until you sell it. So there's always some profit taking that happens too. So I think there was 3 things that happened there at once: coronavirus scare, profit taking, Robinhood app seeing and responding to that, and people acting like day traders. And I mean, what's the stock market up right now? We're up, last I checked, a fair amount already today.
Well, so here's what's interesting here. Number one, these Robinhood. This trader friend of mine, he is really aggressive and really down on Robinhood investors, right?
Right.
Well, the funny thing is, he's getting pushback from some of these people that are actually investing their own money in this app, and the guy says, "Yeah, this crash is terrible. I'm only up 63% right now."
Right.
So like, look, if you're making money doing it, that's great. Just know that, like anything else, there's a chance of downturn, and ultimately over time, I'm really bullish on the American economy. I don't know what it's going to look like in the next 12 or 24 hours. But the
stocks are 500 points on the day. We were down 1,800 yesterday. So,
there you go.
If we hadn't lost 1,800 yesterday, we'd be talking about what a great day 500 is. So, but anyway, the stock market is the least of the things that we want to talk about.
Right. Let's talk about, you mentioned coronavirus. So let's talk about that. I think that there's a couple things to take away from these increase. First of all, Johnson & Johnson is beginning human trials of their COVID-19 testing or vaccine.
Which by the way, is not human rights trials. I want to be clear that as I was reading our notes, I read that as human rights trials, and I was like, what's Johnson doing getting involved in human rights trials? What am I? Oh, human trials.
That was the wrong category, right?
Right. It was it's amazing how just like read something wrong and it implies a totally different meaning to a sentence.
Exactly. So, that's some good news on the COVID side. But I think the takeaway from these increased infection rates, whether the testing is increasing or not increasing, I don't know about you, but I'm hearing a heck of a lot less about it from people than I was 2 or 3 months ago when there were 150 cases in all of Pennsylvania and people are freaking out about it. Now it's like, okay, yeah, this county got 300 new infections today. Whatever, and like people have become a little bit less sensitive because they know people who have gotten the virus, who have gone through it. And like, we kind of see what can happen, right?
Well, yeah, I think that the main reason there, and it's so awful that you can't talk about this without sounding callous, but the realization is that these are mostly people who are in the nursing homes, like 70 to 80%. There's a bunch of comorbidity, meaning that there's something else wrong. And the bottom line is something was going to get those people anyway. Yeah. Something was going to get that person with the impaired immune system anyway. It just so happened to be COVID that did. And I think that people are also realizing that they just can't live in fear. They can't subject their lives to, a disease like this. I really like the line in Heat that Al Pacino says, "You can get killed walking your doggy." It's something's going to get you. You can't just pull up stakes and go be a hermit for forever. And so people are now coming out of the woodwork.
That's great. Let's talk housing.
Amazing numbers on housing.
It is really, really something.
That's crazy. I remember, it doesn't feel like it was that long ago that like median home price in America was like 220, 230. Now what is it? 333?
330 is the national median home price. And median, we're not talking averages.
Right.
It's not like you take the $5 million home and average it with a 20,000. This is the one right in the middle of all of the data. That's pretty darn good. That's up 4.3% year over year, which, on average, they say the average appreciation rate is somewhere between 5 and 6%. We're not far off from the average. That's pretty darn good.
Yeah, it's amazing what we're seeing. What's amazing as well, what's driving that up is interest rates, which is I think the next thing that you wanted to talk about. So low interest rates is going to continue to push housing values up. I'm friends with the local realtor named Christina Deal, and she does a lot of work with Mark Ponce, who's a local residential lender. He's locking people in at 2.99%.
Well, and
I'm ready to pick up property management for a guy who is moving to Florida and he is locking in his house down there at 2.9 something percent. So when you figure the after taxable effects, if you make enough in taxes to, I think it has to be $25,000 worth of interest to make not just the standard deduction make sense. The after taxable effects of a 2.99% rate are like ridiculous.
Well, not just that, but my first mortgage was at 6.25%. And I mean, that was on a 15-year note. So like I never refinanced it because the balance kept getting paid down so quickly. But on these type of numbers, the difference between a 6% mortgage on $100,000 and a 2.99%, you're talking half. And it's the same time period, half of the cost every month. So on a I saw something the other day, $250,000 loan, the payment every month is like $1,083 or something like that. That's insane. I mean, insanely good. That's a great situation to be in. And then you take that into account with what the Fed was talking about earlier this week, keeping those rates low for what? Through 2022, right?
Through 2022. Not until 2022, through 2022.
Right.
So that's the rest. That's all of 2001, all of 2021, all of 2022, and the rest of 2020, which I know it feels like we've got 8 years left of 2020. I know it feels like, but so they're saying we're not going to raise rates for 2.5 years.
Yep. That's awesome.
I mean, that tells me how low they think, how long they think this recovery is going to be. But it also tells me how strong the dollar is and how strong the U.S. economy is in comparison with other markets. Remember, we talked yesterday about the deflationary cycle that we could be seeing and how inflation is how you combat that, and how other markets around the world want their economy to be weak in relation to ours so that their trade is better. And so what we need to do is artificially depreciate our money just so that this doesn't happen. We want to be ahead of everybody else, but if we're too far ahead of everybody else, it's actually really bad for us and really bad for them. So that's why you see the Fed buying mortgage-backed securities. That's why you see the stock market going up and you see interest rates going down, is because the Fed is trying to inject money into the monetary system so that we don't have a deflationary cycle, which would be ultimately very damaging.
This is a fantastic comment. I mean, I don't know how you bring in your whole family here. I don't know how your family is. Maybe they're the entire viewership of this show. But Jason, really good question. What do you think the natural interest rate should be or would be? That's really hard. I mean, with the Federal Reserve involved, I mean, typically in a healthy market, interest rates are a response to the amount of capital in the system. If there's not enough capital, interest rates go up to attract foreign investors to bring capital to the United States. And, and then when there's too much capital, prices go down. That's not what we have here, though. So, I mean, in a healthy economy.
But here's the thing. In that system, there's going to be major crashes and major famine, and people are going to be drowning, and they're going to need to cling on to a life preserver. And you know what life preserver is oftentimes offered to people? Communism. So a little bit of government intervention can prevent communism. A little bit of socialism protects you from a lot of socialism. It's why I'm a pragmatist when it comes to these things. If we could have an economy set up where we said, you know what, we're not going to get involved. We're just going to let the market fail and let it correct itself all by itself. But we don't do that. That's not what people do. When people are desperate and people are hurting, they break into, it's what Les Mis is all about. When you're starving, you will steal bread. Yeah. Even if you're opposed to communism, if it will make you better, you will go for it.
By the way, I love the reference to Les Mis. I totally disagree with your sentiment here, but I love the Les Mis reference. I was talking about this book. That's a phenomenal book. If you never read it, it's incredible.
You read the book?
Oh yeah.
I really want to read the book. I haven't read the book. I love big long books like that.
It's a hard read, because it's written in, it's written when people actually written in a time when people actually read books, and it's a little
not
bit
dumbed down. I love a lot of that old literature and stuff like that. The Three Musketeers, is phenomenal. Count of Monte Cristo, phenomenal. I just finished Anna Karenina.
Can't do it. Russian authors, they are so depressing.
So I mean, it was okay. It was entertaining, but I didn't like it as much as I thought that I was going to. So,
dude,
all right, dude.
I read one.
We've gotten into 5% of our content, and we're about 30%. 30% of our content.
We're gonna do a whole show on books one of these days. All right. So more good news.
It was a good time.
More good news. Forbearance. All right. Yep. Properties in forbearance. We talked about this yesterday, I think. 1/3 of the properties that are in forbearance are actually paying their mortgage every month. That's phenomenal news. Number two, 112,000 fewer properties and fewer homeowners are in forbearance than they were at the peak of the market in May 22nd. That's great news. One not so good point of not so good news related to forbearance is that these servicers are still getting hammered. With all of the politicians coming out and saying, hey, you don't have to pay your mortgage. We'll put it in forbearance. We'll put the payments and interest on the end of the loan. There's still the problem with these loan servicers because they end up being the middleman and they're the ones holding the bag. So what happens is if a loan servicers typically originate the loan, they'll fund it and then they sell the note on the secondary market. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong here, but that's right. Typically what happens. The servicer continues to service the loan for like 0.25% of the mortgage amount every year. And so they're making a few dollars, sending out the payment coupons, collecting the money and sending it on to the investors. But they're also backing the loan. So if the
I did it on your reps and warrants. When I had my mortgage license and my lending license, and I would sell loans out the back end, and I was on the hook for that loan for the first 30 days in some cases, the first year in other cases, if there was fraud, the entire time of the mortgage. So there was all kinds of reasons why they could charge a loan back to me if they wanted to. If you're a servicer, you're on the hook indefinitely under certain circumstances for that loan. And if the servicer approves a forbearance, they are then on the hook for the missed payments and missed interest to the lender. They're going to make it back eventually from the borrower, but they're on the hook for the float.
Well, and here's the rub here. $8.8 billion with a big B,
right,
owed from servicers to Fannie and Freddie. And now we got you're a day late. Out of here. Hey, this is Sam. He came to all right, out of here.
See you, buddy. Thanks for joining.
Anyway, so that's a huge liability.
100%.
Hanging out there, and that's in an industry. I forget the exact numbers. I don't have them in front of me, but I want to say it's like a $20 billion a year economy. Like, geez, total revenue for that segment of the economy is only about 20 million. So you're talking almost half. Just
20 million? 20? Yeah, okay.
Billion. B. Sorry, not million. B. But I mean that's relatively small compared to the liability. That's a big deal. That's a big deal and something that we've got to keep an eye on. All right. One more thing.
Yeah, that's the equivalent of that's the equivalent of you making $50,000 a year, but having $25,000 a year in credit card debt.
Well, and not even credit card debt, but like
bills due tomorrow.
Right, bills due tomorrow on top of your other expenses. Right. I mean, like that's a big deal. So
yeah, because it's total revenue, it's not total profit. So yeah, that's crazy. You're exactly right.
So one bit of conjecture here. I think that there's something coming to areas like Central PA that is going to be great for people that own and hold properties. but may not be great for us living here.
Well, yes.
Yeah, so there's a trend that looks like it's coming to fruition. We've been talking about it a while, but a trend of an exodus from urban markets into suburban markets and even into rural markets where prices are lower, the standard of living is higher. People are less surrounded by other individuals all the time, and through this COVID, we see that the remote work environment is a real possibility where people can still be productive.
Do you think it is?
I do it every day. I mean, you know what I mean? Like it depends on the industry, right? It really does. But a lot of jobs that in the past, I mean, you think, okay, so I get the same opinion on schools, right? The amount of education that goes on in education is very small compared to the time commitment. The amount of work that goes into a work day is really small compared to the time commitment. If you're working 8 hours a day in an office, what are you getting? 3 hours of work done?
Right.
Maybe. And then you add on the commute. Now you're at 10 hours. You got a 30% production rate. That's terrible.
Yeah.
If you can get an extra hour of sleep, hang out with the kids in the morning, roll out of bed, and then hit the phones or do whatever you're doing and put in 6 hours a day from home, you're doubling your productivity and lowering your time commitment. I think that's a huge.
My boy Jake Conaway in the early days when he and I were working at a subprime sweatshop together in the mortgage industry, he always said, work the entire time you're at work. It's not that hard because we'd be there in the office till 7 or 8 o'clock at night, pounding out the phone calls and everything like that. And Jake was the number one salesman. He'd leave every day at like 4:30, 5:30, something like that. I'm like, Jake, how do you do it? He's like, it's easy. I just work the whole time I'm at work.
Right.
And it's not that he was aggressively working. It's just that the only thing we ever accomplished before lunch was deciding what we were getting for lunch.
Right. There you go. Exactly. You just hang out. And let's be honest, in sales, especially if it's direct to consumer,
right.
Consumer sales, they don't start till 4 o'clock anyway.
Right.
You know what I mean? So anyway, you got that. I think that what we're going to see in these markets, I mean, we already have a crunch on housing, right? There's less supply than there is demand. We already see increasing price points. I think you're going to see a lot more demand at higher price points as people move out of these urban areas. You're going to see much more of a demand for housing. They're going to be coming from an area where the median home price is $600,000 or $500,000, moving into an area that's median's $250,000 or $300,000, and hey, look, they can afford to pay a lot more for a lot less.
Yeah. So I mean, it's crazy because everyone recently has been posting for the past like 3 to 5 years all these great stories of stuff about how great Lancaster County is to live in, and how great Central Pennsylvania is to live in, and mostly by realtors. I love it here. I never want to leave any place, and I never want to live anyplace else. And most people know that. However, I sarcastically, every time somebody posts one of those things, I say, no, it's not. It's awful to live here.
Terrible.
This is one of the worst places to live. And I usually the realtors understand that I'm joking. I'm like winking at it, and also they understand that like the comment is good because it helps boost their algorithms and everything like that. But it's true. California used to be the only super uber duper liberal state in the West, and they have since turned Washington and what's the other state, Oregon, very blue. They're affecting Texas because people are fleeing. And so I think that you might see a demographic and political switch, or not switch, but shift in Central PA.
And I mean, that's just part of it. What's funny is people leave these liberal areas because of the application of liberal ideals, but they don't leave the liberal ideals there. They take it with them and they want to change it all. Colorado, another good one. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean,
have you seen the movie? Have you watched the show Yellowstone?
No.
Josh, you've got to watch Yellowstone. It's on Peacock. It's a great show. If you like Ozark, if you like Sopranos, if you like any of those things, Yellowstone is awesome. It's set in Montana, and it's about this family that's been in Montana for forever. And they talk about, the one dad is licking this ice cream cone, and he says to his son, "Man, I got to tell you, these transplants sure can make some good ice cream." And the son says, "Dad, what's a transplant?" A transplant's somebody who comes from someplace else, and then what they want to do is make this place. They came here because it's different, and they want to make it just like wherever they came from. So I will pragmatically say it's not just conservative liberal, but it is that shift of people not assimilating to where they're going, but taking too much of where they left with them, when really the reason they left where they were was whatever.
Well, so I got to say one thing about Lancaster County. I think it is an amazing cross section, because I'm moving away from Philadelphia and that region. It was, I don't want to say culture shock, but like I'm sick and tired of going out to eat and looking at chain A, B, or C. It's like I miss the authentic small town or small community pizza shop that makes an awesome pizza, and it takes a while to kind of assimilate to a different.
Figure out where the good ones are from the bad ones.
Yeah, but I mean Lancaster County, Lancaster City. I'm impressed with the fine dining, with the boutique shops, and with the quality of the chains that they brought into the city.
Absolutely, it's a great place to visit. Don't buy housing here.
That's right. Well, but then rural areas too, where you got horse and buggy rolling down the road. You can go and get your organic beef, and you can get your eggs, and you can get your your great produce. I really love Lancaster County. So, all right, enough with housing. Let's move on to unemployment. Hey, look, new unemployment claims, they keep going down every week, but geez, they're high.
Yeah.
I mean, 100,
one and a half less.
1.5 million. That's 100,000 less than predicted, which
1.6 was expected by the so-called experts.
That's right. So here's the real kicker. Last week, all the news about the new jobs and everything that was great, it was bogus. It was due to a misclassification of data, and instead of being at 13.9, we're at 13.7% unemployment. We're actually at 16.4 unemployment. That is not good news. No. And that is the number that continues to scare me when we get housing data, when we get economic data. And I think that the Fed's announcement that they're going to have these rates low for an extended period of time are an indicator that they see the same slow recovery that I've been seeing. And unless something changes with these unemployment numbers, it could be a long
have I ever told you my Chinook story really quickly? Because of some leadership positions that I was in with student council, we lined up to have an Air National Guard Chinook come and land. Those are the ones like the two big rotors, everything like that. And because I was on the leadership team that set this up, like I just pulled the pilot aside and was talking to him while like the 2 or 3 crew chiefs were like doing tours through it, everything like that. And I'm talking to this pilot, and I'm like, let me ask you a question. I know you guys have like a pre-takeoff checklist that they always show in the movies and everything like that. How long would it take you to get that bird off the ground? And he said 10 minutes. He said, I could do it in 8.5, but I wouldn't feel comfortable.
Right.
You get in your car and you're driving in 3.5 seconds.
Right.
Like the bigger, the more mechanical, the more complex. And that's not a fighter jet. That's not a nuclear submarine. That's not a whatever. That's just a helicopter. Right. So it's 10 minutes to essentially turn the engine and put it in gear and move forward. That's a 10-minute process. So starting an economy going is even if everything's going good and everything's okay, it's a process and it's going to take some time.
It is. And that's okay. Hey, bullish long-term. I'm all about it.
Absolutely. 100%.
All right. So let's talk about controversy. I think that there is,
isn't that all we talk about, controversy?
There's no controversy here.
I feel like our listeners would be twice as many as they are if we could just discipline ourselves to be less controversial.
There's no controversy at all. So, all right. I think we got a major problem in this country, and I don't think it's what everybody wants it to be, or at least the news says it is. Here's what I think it is. I think that free speech is under attack. That's it. All across the board. I think that people are demonized for what they say, even if they said it 10 years ago, even when they said it, I mean, and look, I'm right now, I'm talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, and the social unrest throughout the country. I think it's so important that we have conversations about this stuff, that we can come to the conversation with different opinions. And you know what? If you listen to me and then you prove me wrong, I'm really going to think about it. I might not change.
I've done that twice this week. I've said, Josh, I was wrong.
Oh man,
you were right. Yeah, I think we had a very good and respectful conversation last week, and I was very happy that we didn't get more blowback from it. And I think that you and I, right afterwards, said, "Man, that got hot and heavy." We did. I don't believe that we unintentionally crossed any lines. It certainly was our intention not to cross any lines, because we don't. We're caring human beings ourselves. We think racism is disgusting, but we also think there are more healthy outlets than burning down neighborhoods to express that. And if our protest of one death results in the death of, what are they up to, like 20 deaths now? That's certainly a problem.
Well, and all right, so and
that's exactly right here. People don't want to admit they're wrong. So I was doing some coaching with somebody earlier today, and we talked on just the concept of admitting when you're wrong in general. And I think that even if you're only 10% wrong in a situation, you know what I mean? Like if you're in a car accident, let's totally remove it from politics and money and everything like that. If you're in a car accident, and that car accident is 10% your fault. Maybe it was the roads, maybe you were hit by a drunk driver, maybe whatever. But if you knew you were going just two miles an hour too fast, and you think that was a slight precipitating factor, you've got to admit that to yourself, and you've got to own that.
Yeah.
Because the only way you start getting better is if you admit what was your fault and control the things that are your fault.
Yeah. And all right, so I'm gonna use a little bit of political in this conversation, but like I had a couple years ago, I had a conversation with my wife, and we were talking about it was actually during the Me Too movement, right?
So we're going from
car wrecks to other car wrecks.
We've gone from free speech and racial inequity to spousal disputes. Great.
Right.
This isn't controversial at all, Josh. Continue.
All right. Me Too movement, right?
Should be banned by the end of the day.
Now, I was trying to understand, like you talk about rape culture and some of the other things, and like maybe I'm part of the problem, but I didn't see it, right? And so my wife put it to me like this. She says, if I ever go into a parking garage in the evening, I am always thinking that there might be somebody in that parking garage, and I am taking extra precautions and looking out for that. It blew my mind because I never even thought about it. I mean, it's not even part of my life to even put myself in that context. And it made me realize that like we all live in the same world, but the way we see it can be completely different.
Right.
And it's made me a lot more open to, kind of realizing that, look, I certainly, what I know is way less than what I don't know.
So, right. And I think that, that's why it's important to understand where somebody else is coming from. Yeah. Because, we say, what's the big deal? As a man, I say, what's the big deal? Only 1% of the guys out there are scummy, creepy, rapey guys.
That's a lot of people.
And the woman says, yeah, and it only takes me running into one of them in order to get raped. Right. Like, so I totally, that's very good commentary that you bring up.
My wife's watching the show. I love it. She said, "You're welcome." I love it.
That's great.
But so, all right, here's what I wanted to talk about specifically with this topic. If you haven't you had your head in the hole, there's been a lot of executives that have been fired or have stepped down over the past week because of things that they've said in social media, private text, private conversations.
Some of them have been proactive. Some of them have been like the dude from Reddit who was like, you know what, there should be a black board member on this board, and there's not right now. And so I'm going to step down. He wasn't just a board member, he was a co-founder of Reddit. And so he stepped down. And I mean, I don't know what the monetary whether he has monetized that enough, but he's got his, and he's going to go on and do other things. And so he's like, I don't need to just be here and occupy space. So I mean, I applaud that.
That's a different scenario. That is a guy's choice,
right?
An owner and a board member to step down because he thought he thinks that it is in the best interest of their organization and their platform. And I think that's really noble and honorable. What I think is a problem is when you have somebody that you got the opinion editor of the New York Times. It's the opinion section of the newspaper. Like opinion, it's in the name. He's kicked out. James Bennett gone from New York Times. You've got the guy from CrossFit. I have seen posts that, the CEO of CrossFit was chased out the door. You didn't hear about this?
No.
This guy made some comments. I forget the platform that he made it, whether it was on social media or whether it was to the employees. I think it was on the Zoom conference with the employees. But the bottom line is the context of the post or of what he said, I've seen on Facebook every single day. I mean,
right.
It wasn't so controversial that it was that 6 months ago anybody would have said a thing about it. But in the current environment, he was dropped. CrossFit was dropped.
Also, is a leader of something, and so therefore he's held to higher standards.
Absolutely.
So a comment that wouldn't land you in Facebook jail, when said by somebody else, results in them being fired from their job.
That's right. And then Scrap Life is a spinoff from Under Armour. They're, I follow Scrap Life.
Under Armour's been struggling recently.
They have been. But so Scrap Life is a wrestling spinoff from Under Armour. They're basically a sub brand of Under Armour, and they have a lot of athletes that they sponsor that are spokespeople for them. Well, one of the founders made a Facebook comment over the last couple days that was supposed to be for a private group that he posted live for everybody to see. And they've had a mass exodus of some of their athletes because of what he said. And you know what? That is I think a proper use of for the athletes, if they don't want to be associated with that kind of thing, I think it's appropriate.
Right.
But what ended up happening is he gets kicked out as as a managing partner. They're trying to buy him out and get him out of the organization, and that's a big penalty for saying what you think. But I guess, you know what? You can say whatever you want, but you can't.
Yeah, I think so I'm somebody who thinks out loud.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm somebody who processes information by speaking it out loud. And sometimes I find out where the line is by saying something and seeing people's reaction to it.
Yeah.
And that is how I learn whether this is an acceptable idea or not. And so in our society today, I don't want to make excuses for people who are just saying totally racist things and totally racist positions. But there's got to be I say Republicans hold Democrats to too high of a standard and vice versa and everything like that. Like, we've got to be able to allow people to revise and update their comments. You're right. I said X, and that probably wasn't the right word. I probably should have used this word, which has a different connotation. By the way, that's one thing that I've recently been doing with my kids is we talked about like unique, individual, peculiar, and which has a neutral, a positive, and a negative connotation. And so we're just kind of talking about connotations that words have. I think it's important that we as a society allow people to revise and update comments. That also doesn't mean that you can just say whatever you want and then apologize for it tomorrow. We saw that for too long in society too. And I think that's a problem. I just think we've moved too far in the other direction, where there's a quickness to judge, and and I don't even know what this CrossFit guy said. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking in general. You say the wrong thing, or you said what you thought was the right thing, but it was taken wrong, or you put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable, and it becomes something different, and then you're in trouble, and maybe we should just let people apologize.
You just have to assess the situation. All right. So listen, the last thing that I want to jump on before we get in, in this kind of some heavy content here is, look, in Seattle, I mean, I'm kind of speechless about this.
From controversy to controversy here, my friend.
Yeah, but this is I get a different take on this controversy. Okay. So you have a group of protesters that bust into City Hall. They take over several blocks of the city, and they rename it CHAZ, which stands for Police Free Autonomous Zone. Okay.
Right.
And basically they start their own community inside of Seattle that is outside of the current government, and they're doing their own thing. And they've got small gardens, they've got medical stations set up, they've got the no cop co-op with that, they're handing out supplies and free food to people. And what struck me about this is that this is exactly illustrative.
Sounds rather local government to me.
That's what I'm saying. It's exactly illustrative of what the founders had in mind. If you have a small community, you need a small government. When it gets larger, the government gets more and more complex and more convoluted. So, I mean, I think that fundamentally, we can all agree on having a government that is small enough that it can be managed and can be changed quickly. But when we have this huge monstrosity, it's like moving a tanker truck or a tanker, tanker line or whatever the heck, a big boat.
Yeah. I agree. Anything on a small scale can work. The kibbutzes in Israel work, and they're basically a town of communism. The kibbutzes are these individual towns in Israel, and they're a microcosm of communism. So communism definitely works on the small scale. My house with my children is a communist state, from all according to their abilities to all according to their needs. So I'm all about it. The problem with this free Capitol Hill or CHAZ or whatever you want to call it, or maybe those are two different things, and I'm just so ignorant I don't even understand it. The problem is they stole the land. And I understand how rich with irony it is for a white guy in America to be complaining about stealing land and setting up an experimental governmental form to see if it works. But, they stole the area. They just went in and said, this is ours now. If you were a shopkeeper or a store owner or a resident here before, get on board or get out.
We're going to have to put footnotes for this show of what we really meant when we said these things, all of the asterisks and footnotes. All right. So let's talk fun. It's almost the weekend. There's some cool things that are coming up now. Some sports are coming back online. The NBA is going to be kicking off their, I think, a truncated season starting in Orlando on June 30th. That's good news. We're getting back to much more normal. I love that.
Yeah, so I think that we're going to see the rest of the summer. It's going to pick up speed as it picks up speed. So it's like a jet engine. You know what I mean? The faster it goes, the faster it goes. So I'm really, really excited for what we're going to see.
Yeah, we also MLS Soccer's jumping on July 8th, and if you're a movie fan. Really good news. Starting July 17th, AMC Theaters announced that they're going to be reopening their theaters, pending the outcome of a bunch of petitions that are trying to push that off. So
pending the outcome of, AMC is getting ready to get bought or sold, they are in the AMC movie theaters is in huge financial trouble right now, which is part of the reason probably that they're pushing to open so much. Also, tying back into the Robinhood app, I think that when we see sports, I'm really interested to see what the stock market does when sports opens back up, because that's going to mean sports betting, legal and illegal, opens back up. And there's a lot of people who think that part of the reason that we've seen this uprun in the stock market is because people have been scratching that itch by betting on the stock market.
I did see that. That's really interesting. That's an interesting take. That's an interesting take.
I mean, if you think about it, sports betting, there is analytics behind it. Yeah. And maybe some of those people realize that they can have the same analytical play in what happens in the stock market.
Yeah. Well, Judah, holy cow, that was a lot of talking today.
That was a lot of talking.
Hey, if you guys enjoyed the show, like and share the video. We will be back here at noon on Monday for, we're actually next week, instead of doing the 10 don'ts for new investors, we're going to start with the 10 do's, 10 things that you need to do as a new investor in the first 30 days. So that's going to be cool. All right, Judah, have a great weekend, man. We'll see you Monday. Thanks, everybody.
Absolutely. See you, everybody.